on the P&L sheet, you could say, oh, I've made £1 million profit this year. But what you don't factor in into that is things like loans, things like capital that has been introduced that you owe back, other debts. It may look like you've earned £1 million, but in reality, there's so many other outgoings on there. Your bank balance doesn't replicate what your P&L looks like. They're totally different things.
So sales are up, but you're still skint. Sound familiar? That's exactly what today's guest sees every single week. Harry Lewington is the guy founders call when they're scaling fast, but secretly they're panicking about cash. He's not your average Joe. He's running a finance company from Bali. He's helping e-commerce and founders around the world build financial systems that actually work without the fluff, without the jargon or the last minute fire drills. He's got strong views on why profit is just a theory and why growth can kill your business if you're not careful, and why your P&L might be lying to you. So if you've ever thought, why am I working so hard but I'm still skint? This episode is for you. Harry, welcome to the show, mate. Let's get into it.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Chris. Very excited.
I'm just a little bit gutted with doing it on StreamYard and I didn't have to come out to Bali to see you. And on that point, you're living in Bali, you're running a finance company, you're helping founders avoid cash disasters. How on earth did that happen?
Yeah, exactly. So I think one word sums it up, be COVID. I think quite a hot topic, but that kind of changed the trajectory of kind of my life and where I was going, and it's led to where I am now. I think that was a pivotal point. So it started about 3 years ago, working in-house with a medium-sized firm in the accounts department, slowly working my way up the ladder. And then COVID hit, everyone had to work from home, affected millions of people. And from there, I kind of looked at the opportunities that were around. People and clients were getting used to working from home and being remote. So I kind of took that model and said, well, if I do a very good job for people and they're happy for remote services, then I could set up the company in the UK and work from anywhere. So yeah, it's kind of trickled into being in the UK for a year, getting the foundation started. And then as we moved on, stuff started to build, got traction, got a bit of exposure, had enough clients to kind of make the leap from my job to then my company in itself. And then it's gone leaps and bounds. And yeah, I've kind of ended up in Bali somehow. So yeah, it was a bit of a transition, not the usual path, I would say. But it's definitely become more fruitful as it's gone along.
Sounds amazing. So from what I can understand, you've built LFS differently. There's you're strong on no corporate nonsense, like real world solutions. What was the moment that you realized founders needed a different kind of finance support to most of the solutions out there?
Yeah, so we offer fractional services. So we basically plug into any business, any size, from one-man bands all the way up to multi-million pound companies. Everyone needs different things, but we found that no one really likes finance. It's kind of that, elephant in the room. They don't really want to talk about it. They kind of bury their head in the sand when it comes to it. Um, and it just seemed like a niche there that I could kind of attract. With being remote, I can be around 24/7 for them. There's not someone that needs to be in the office. They don't have to have a space. They might not have an office. They might actually be working from their own house. So they can get my services wherever they are. And both ways, it allows me for my flexibility for our company to kind of provide those services if and when. So that was definitely a very good point to put to them, and they were very happy with it. And it's quite a unique thing. Obviously, more of that is happening with people realizing the world is very small when it comes to Zoom. I mean, you can have a conversation from America and the UK, and it feels like you're next door. So that kind of Zoom and technology at the moment has really connected everyone, and it's basically allowed us to almost sit next to them in the boardroom, or next to their desk when they need us most.
One of the things that you wrote that really hit me hard is cash is reality, profit is theory. Can you sort of break down what you mean by that?
Exactly. So you could be so profitable, you could on the P&L sheet, you could say, "Oh, I've made £1 million profit this year." But what you don't factor in into that is things like loans, things like capital that's been introduced that you owe back, other debts. It may look like you've earned £1 million, but in reality, there's so many other outgoings on there. Your bank balance doesn't replicate what your P&L looks like. They're totally different things. So it might look like you made a nice profit on paper, but in reality, there's so many other things that come into it. So a lot of people see that bottom line and think, "Oh yeah, I must have done really well this year." And then they look at their bank balance and it's like, "Oh, okay, no, I can't have done that well because there's nothing left in the bank." So you have to kind of take both with a pinch of salt. You have to monitor your P&L all the time, checking for, are your expenses okay? Do you need to increase your income? But then you also need to see, right, if I want to plan an expansion, if I want to buy an office, if I want to buy some more equipment, well, there and then at that time, do you have the funds for that? In the funds in a month's time, will you have the funds for that? Will you need to raise more capital for that? We have to take out another loan. So they kind of both need to be used together because one's lagging, the P&L you could say is lagging, and the cash flow is real. That's what you see every day in your bank account. So it's kind of taking them both together, and having a very tight cash flow and then also a very tight P&L will allow you to plan a lot easier and not have big spikes or situations where you're like, "Oh, I cannot afford this."
What are the things that people perhaps sometimes miss that don't sit on the P&L but erode that cash?
Yeah, so it'll be stuff like general expenses. I mean, people buy things all the time without maybe putting it into a cash flow. So they might buy train tickets, hotel rooms, bits and bobs, which day-to-day things which build up and that you might not see straight away on your P&L. So I would advise to always have a very broken down P&L so you can drill into each and everything that you've got so you can keep an eye on these expenses as they're happening to make sure that you're not, "Oh, okay, it seems like I'm spending a lot on X amount. I need to stop doing that because we've got a big purchase coming up, which is going to take a lot of cash if we can't get a loan, for example. So we're going to have to use cash in the bank." So you can factor all these things in, and there's other things you can bolt in to be more wary of where your spending is going and looking further down the road with a cash flow forecast, for example, to see, "Oh, okay, in 2 months' time, we have a big purchase coming up. I might need to wind down some of these smaller purchases to allow me to have enough cash." Even though we might be very profitable business, might be £1 million in profit, but in reality, it's only the cash in the bank which you're going to be able to play with at that time.
So many people, and obviously my world insolvency, the number one problem that I see with directors is that, and it probably won't surprise you, but we have some pretty big businesses. When you ask them for some, P&L, it's like, "I've got one." I says, "When was it last updated?" Probably about 4 months ago. And it doesn't really matter what size business you are. And I say this, I mean, we'll support a bloody one-man band. And when we sort of get into the meat and potatoes of it, they've not had the finger on the pulse. That they've just used an accountant to do. One of the things that we've got to check with directors is, listen, where are the problems? If insolvency is the right option for them, the only option really, we want to be checking. Well, the big thing is overdrawn loan accounts bites directors on the arse because they go into liquidation. They're going to be asked to pay it back. Now, one of our strong points is, well, listen, we'll help you understand that on day one. But the quickest way to understand it is like, "Well, can you pull me a trial balance off?" Well, I don't have one of that. I've got my accounts. So I go on company's house and go, "Well, they're 18 months old." It's just, and people they just don't get it. It's like, that was a snapshot of your business a hell of a long time ago. Why do you think
Yeah,
there's so much poor financial management for business owners in the UK?
I think touching on that, so there's statutory accounts, which every business obviously has to file each year. Whereas if you have management accounts, they should be done monthly, if not even more frequently. So if you have those at least each month as a minimum, you can be seeing where your money is going. Instead of using, statutory accounts, or I know some clients that don't use any accounting package like Xero or QuickBooks. Now, if you haven't got that put in place, you're bound to fail. You've got no tracking, you're not seeing anything. Again, you're just relying on that bank balance, which is going to play tricks on you because you can't plan ahead efficiently enough without looking at your P&L. So I think a lot of people are not inherently lazy, but it's one of those tasks where it requires a lot of effort to kind of get right and maintain so that it's accurate and that people want to do it. And not everyone has the time. Of course, there's loads of other things in a business that need to be done apart from that. But it's almost the one thing which, if you don't understand that language of accounting and finance, you're almost destined to fail.
And well, for me, you have to have a finance function in your business, regardless of what you're
Mm.
turning over. And I think that scares a lot of people. So let's talk about what fractional is, because that's people might not understand what they can pick up, what they can, because I mean, people say that Zero is dead easy to use, or QuickBooks is. Like, I can't, I'm not good at that. I'm not, but I literally can't do it. I need someone else to do that. I need someone who's a bookkeeper. So let me just clarify what I'm asking you here. What is a fractional finance function, first of all?
So yes, I think the word was coined by America first, and we've kind of now taken that, and a lot of people in the UK now use it. But it basically plugs into a business, and you're like a consultant. So you're not employed by the business; you just plug into it, and you basically offer financial advice, or you can do bookkeeping, accounting. You're basically like an in-house, but you're not in-house, and you can chop and change. You can be very flexible of how you need them. If you need them, Monday to Friday, you just need them monthly. We work all different times and hours to suit the business because you're all in different stages. You're all going to have different needs. You might actually have someone in finance already, but you need a CFO now, or you need an account manager, or you need a bookkeeper. So it's really just having that flexibility where a business can have you for 6 months, can have you for 2 years, can have you for two months just for a cleanup, and they can afford that and not have to commit to employing someone full-time, part-time, where there's a lot more legalities around that. It's a lot easier way of kind of managing the cost of that.
Can we sort of go into some of the services you touched on there? Because you talked about CFO, you talked about cleanup job, you talked about bookkeeping. Are these all the things that your firm can provide?
Yeah, exactly. So you've got the day-to-day things, which are like the bookkeeping, the tidy of the accounts, chasing invoices, uploading receipts, the kind of day-to-day things that a finance function needs to be taken care of and needs to support founders or the businesses that they're in. And then you can move on to more accounting services. These are slightly different. That's like what I was talking about, the management accounts. So that's each month having a set of P&Ls, balance sheets, cash flow forecasts for the company to review and see are they actually on target for the goals and budgets that they've set themselves. There's a slightly higher level service, but it can drive real impact for businesses because they get real clarity on what they need and how they're doing. And if they're doing something wrong, we can advise, okay, you need to do this now. And then we also partner with CFOs. So CFO function is kind of taking all of that together and putting it in a kind of strategy piece and going, right, here's where the business is currently going. Here's what we need to do to change it. And these are some strategies either out the box or customized for them to actually achieve their growth that they're after in a financial sense.
So that's I suppose that last piece that you're talking about, the CFO strategy, that like some people would call that a commercial director as well, wouldn't they? It's sort of that's really interesting. It sort of blurs the lines a little bit. What type of things does a CFO do then? But like, what would the modus operandi of a fractional CFO be? That they're sort of coming in, tell us how it plays out.
Yeah, so they would help to achieve funding. So if you were to do a funding round in your business, they would help lead that, make sure that that's steering in the right direction and is profitable for the business for the long-term goals. But also set out a budget, so a year-long budget or 18-month budget, 24-month budget, and factor in what the growth would look like currently to what a target profit or budget that they would want to achieve. So they would help the business create that with either the CEO or other directors to really formulate a plan to get to that point. They would also help again with the cash flow. So they would look at that and an 18-month to go, right, this is where the funding might need to be done. So that's when they can plan around rounds for funding because it takes time, obviously, to achieve that. And then they also sort of the head of the finance function itself. So if the company's big enough, then you might have multiple bookkeepers, multiple accountants, account managers, all working under the CFO. So they're kind of like the top level. They'll help any issues, but also direct anyone who needs to go to them and kind of help with the managing of that as well. Because they're kind of like a CEO, but for the finance side of it, sitting in that C-suite seat.
So obviously that's going to cost a lot more than a bookkeeper because obviously people that watch this, they're going to be thinking it's the question that no one really likes to answer, and I know it's going to be specific on a case by case basis, Harry, but what type of investment levels is a business going to need to make in these various services? And I say that it's not, they need to stop seeing this as a cost. It is an investment in the business. So like, if you could sort of go through the various levels, just give us a rough idea.
Yeah, sure. So I would say if the business is, a one-man band, they've only just started out, then a bookkeeper will be absolutely fine. They'll be able to keep on top of the day-to-day invoicing. The founder will be doing most of the work anyway themselves. So they'll just need a little bit of support because the business is still at a growing stage. So not necessarily going to need an accountant or a CFO at that point. And then when you start bracketing over maybe the 100,000 revenue mark, that's when you'll start needing extra support. So that would be when the accountants come in, giving you good P&Ls, balance sheets, working with the bookkeeper to manage that now increased workload. And then we find that CFOs are generally around the 500,000 up point of revenue a year. So that's when they come in and they'll help then direct a real strategy piece around that. So they'll help, again, the accountants and the bookkeepers, but they'll really start to lead now with the cash that's coming into the business and really start a plan with that.
What type of investment levels are required for those different types of things? I mean, what do you think someone would spend on a bookkeeper? What's the level up? And I imagine a CFO could go up to anything, but depending on the complexity. But could you give us a ballpark figure, Harry?
Yeah, sure. So depending again, pro-rated, but a bookkeeper for a fractional service, if they're working full time, could be anywhere between say 30 and 40,000 pounds a year. So that would be
Okay.
what I would roughly say. Again, it varies and depending on if they go into other roles. And then you have an accountant, which I would say varies again for fractional, so it's slightly different to employment, anywhere between 60 to 85,000
Mhm.
a year, again, pro-rata depending. And then a CFO, again, that's at C-suite level. So that's the similar bracket, as you said, commercial director, CEO, that kind of director piece, anywhere from 90,000 upwards, depending on the size of the business. There's kind of no cap depending on variety.
No, but a business wouldn't necessarily be paying that level if they're only having them for a day a week or sorry, a day a month. And that's the bit that I think people miss, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So fractional. So you can take that, say for the accountant, the 75,000 a year, and you just break that down to how much you would need them for. If that's one day a week, one day a month, 5 days a week, depending on how much you need them, they can fit into your needs. And that's the fractional, as it's a fraction of a full-time worker, basically. That's kind of how you can see it as, depending on your needs.
One of the things that I've seen you say that I want to dig into is growth the growth versus stability balancing act. Could you help us unpack that a little bit on this?
Yeah, exactly. So we all want to obviously grow as quickly as possible. We want to achieve everything in a short amount of time as possible with the least amount of effort, just to get us there. I mean, that's the ideal situation. Reality is that's not going to be the case. Reality is that there's going to be bumps and hurdles coming, and what you have to be careful of, linking back to the cash flow, is not spending all your money so soon that suddenly when a dip does come, you don't have anything in the reserves. So you have to really balance the, I want to grow, you got to grow consistently, and you've got to grow safely to a point. Now, your level of risk, your level of funding is going to vary depending on your sector that you're in, your competition that you're in, is all going to lay out the different challenges. I mean, that's the whole point of kind of going into business. You don't really know, you're excited for the challenge, but there's also lots of different hurdles that no one knows exactly how it's going to work out. But having that mindset of, well, I'm not going to put all my eggs in one basket, but I also want to grow. So maybe I'll put two or three, but I've got 10. So I'm being a bit more cautious, trying out things, getting the advice of finance, fractional, getting advice of legal, getting advice of HR. These things can all plug into your business to allow you to kind of stretch and grow, but also not crumble at the first hurdle. Because I think a lot of businesses fail even within the first 2 years. It's quite hard to keep that momentum going. So keeping tight purse strings is definitely one of them.
What's the sensible growth number to be aiming for every year?
I think about 20%. I think that is a safe one. And then you want to double your net profit each year. So your top line growth and your net profits. You want to become more efficient, but also increase your revenue. But the efficiency is the key bit. Not having people that shouldn't be in your company, getting rid of them quickly. People that aren't A players, keeping those happy. Making sure that your expenses are low. You're not spending on softwares that you don't need. It's always just clipping that P&L to an absolute minimum and not having excess overheads that you really don't need. Because as you grow, economies of scale, obviously other things will factor into that. You have more people to pay, you have more overheads to go. So keeping that really tight and really increasing that bottom line you'll become more successful.
What, when it comes to sort of reserves and having that war chest, what do you advise your clients to have in reserve on that rainy day fund? How many months worth of operating costs?
So it's definitely 6 months. Would definitely say if you can get to that, that's the magic number. Because a lot of things can change in half a year, whether or not that's the economy starts to go down or starts to go up. If someone's sick and you're very started off straight away, there's lots of different factors which unexpected costs suddenly. If you're working for a coffee company and the coffee price suddenly goes really high up and you can't stay competitive, you need to have that reserve to give you time to have a plan B. So there's lots of different things which will require you to have that reserve because it won't be plain sailing. So I'd say 6 months is definitely a nice comfort zone. And then also having options to get finance as well, whether or not that's investments, if that's loans as well, to kind of utilize that, as a lot of businesses do, most businesses do, to get to that next level. Because cash is tight at the beginning. You're starting out, if you are, or if you're growing, it's going to be tighter.
One of the things that I've liked that you say in the past is founders that build businesses, and it feels more like a gamble. What are the signs of a business that is scaling with shaky foundations?
So I would say the founder is wearing too many hats to start with. So they need to really define their hats that they're wearing and where they can try and outsource, try and bring people in. Because not everyone, you think you're a superstar and you can do everything, but you're probably really good at one thing and one thing only. But you've got a pool of talent that can do everything else: legal, finance, HR, sales, marketing, that kind of thing. You're not going to be the master of all of them. You might be, you might be average at all of them, but you won't be really the best at them. So really, delegation and getting people in to go on that journey with you and inspiring journey and making other people join you and go, yeah, we want to reach this summit. We see what you're doing. We really like what you're doing. That can really drive growth. Whereas if you're trying to do everything yourself, which is probably saving costs because you're not having to outsource, but actually you're kind of stagnating, you're not growing, you're just staying in this comfort zone of yours where it's your little baby if it is starting out, or even if you're growing, you're kind of not unleashing its full potential because you're trying to keep control of everything. And it is difficult. It's human nature, I think, to really want to keep hold of what you've nurtured, and actually letting go and letting other experts come in and guide you will do wonders.
How do you attract A players then? You mentioned that earlier, and sort of like bringing people in for the ride. What would be your advice to business owners out there that perhaps need to mob up, so to speak?
Yeah, exactly. So I definitely think a scorecard for each role that you're asking people to fill, and asking what are the ideal elements of that scorecard. So, for example, for us, if we want a bookkeeper, what are the ideal things we're looking at a bookkeeper? Well, we're looking if they've got attention to detail, that they're problem solving, that they understand what they're actually doing, because it's quite technical, whether or not they're compassionate, and they can deal with clients and all these things which will enable them to really fulfill their role. And you can kind of put them into buckets of A, B, and C players. Now, C players just come along for the ride. They're not too great at their job. You kind of need to get rid of those first. They're not going to help you grow. They're going to stay and probably pull you down a bit. You then have B players who they pull their weight, but they're not exceptional. They do what you tell them to do, almost tick boxing, but they won't really push the business forward. And then the magic ones are the A players. They're the ones that take the initiative, go strive, they get your goal. They're basically like mini yous, and they really try and push you. They look after your company like it was their own, and that kind of galvanizes then the company and the trajectory, and really helps you move on, because a company's nothing without its people, is it? It's what we are. I know AI is coming and there's all of that debate, but at the moment, people are the key, and they're the ones that are going to drive it forward. So having that checklist, and when you're interviewing, see if they tick those boxes. It could be for anything. It could be whatever style and whatever score you want them to be, but have that kind of mini scorecard next to you, so you can really just pick off, right, okay, yeah, this seems like this is someone who is going to be really good for my business.
I like that. I like that. One of the things that I liked about you, Harry, is you were honest about founder mistakes. I think the things you mentioned were not following up, ignoring systems, sort of trying to do everything on your own. Out of all of those ones, what nearly broke you?
I think it's the systems. I think implementing systems, it's so difficult to do, and a lot of people are in their own ways for that. And if you get stuck in your way of doing something, it's very hard to grow, because you're not open to new ideas, and stuff changes all the time, for the good and for the bad. And not being able to kind of be flexible and not be so in the groove of something, I think is key. And kind of being open to anything really. I think, yeah, very, very important.
How are you guys using AI at the moment?
We are starting to, yes. It's kind of one of those where it's kind of a black hole, really. I mean, there's so much and so little at the same time, and it's definitely going to start to grow. And software's coming in. I mean, a lot of softwares already do, including stuff that we use, accountancy packages and stuff. Start to include AI with them, so that's going to help you with reconciling and help you with managing inboxes and emails. It's already there. It's just very new, so it's getting processes in place to see, actually, is this more profitable doing it like this, or is it not quite there yet?
Harry, one of the things I want to ask you, I know you're a tattoo lover. So if you could tattoo one money rule on the inside of every founder's eyelids, what would it be?
Are you sure? That's what
Let's
I've
dive
heard.
into
Are
that.
you sure?
What do you mean? What do you mean?
I mean, just double thinking every purchase, every cost, or every revenue, even, whatever you're going to go into, just have that second thought of, have I checked my P&L? Have I checked my cash flow? Have this been run through the budget? just double checking that whatever decision you're going to make isn't just off the fly and go, right, I'm going to go into it, because 9 times out of 10, you probably regret it because you didn't check. You just had a moment and thought, no, we're doing it. And it come to bite you again. So it's just that, yeah, double checking, and maybe the cautious mind, a little bit of me being in finance and seeing the numbers as they are. Yeah, it's definitely up there.
Obviously, we've talked about like most accountants traditional, they're really just ticking a compliance box, that they're keeping a director out of prison, really. What is
Yeah.
LFS doing that actually helps people scale? What are you doing differently to the vast majority of people out there?
I think it's the attention to detail. I think that's the key. I mean, a lot of people say they have accountants and stuff goes wrong all the time. So it's making
I
sure
see
that
it all the
stuff's
time.
picked up, because the worst thing ever is having someone say they've done something and then a year later HMRC are knocking because something's been missed critically. So that is definitely a huge piece. And then also that being able to have that good rapport with clients, and they can kind of understand on a personal touch. We're not just some see that no one can get hold of at all, only email. Like, we really try and be involved in their business and support them as much as possible, and they don't even have to worry about what's happening. It's all getting taken care of, and that peace of mind that they can focus on the stuff that's really going to drive their business forward, and not actually have to think, oh, we've paid this company, but actually we're still having to keep half an eye on them because they're not producing the service that we require. So it's that peace of mind piece as well.
It's the worst thing, isn't it? If you're giving a job to somebody and then you're checking it all the time, and you're thinking, what's the point? What is it? And I suppose if you're doing that and you're finding something, you've got to get shut of them quickly.
Oh, you've got to go. Yeah, I think it's such a key thing for finance, the attention to detail, and getting the job done, because we are kind of the last point before it then gets quite serious. So it's really managing that.
Worst financial mistake you've ever made?
Oh, for traveling, because it is expensive, but I love it. But yeah, that is the flights and the moving around constantly, different countries. It's expensive, but I do love it. But I suppose if I could just stay somewhere and hovel away, that'd probably be a better use of my money.
Where are you going next, mate?
So we kind of travel Southeast Asia. Me and my missus, she also works online, so we both have our own companies. So yeah, we kind of travel wherever we can, but Asia's the most of it. So we're going to Thailand again in the new year, currently in Bali, and then yeah, we'll travel Philippines and then back to Bali again. So Southeast Asia is kind of the hub at the moment. We love it, the people, the atmosphere, other people similar to us doing this as well. So we can kind of network out here, and there's a small community, which is nice.
Sounds mega. Listen, last one. If someone's feeling like they're drowning in numbers, they're trying to scale, but they're stressed, what's the one thing that they can do this week to start fixing it?
So definitely reach out to a finance professional. That's the main one. I think trying to do it all yourself and working through that, 9 times out of 10, you're going to go back to square one again, because you need that advice, you need that kind of sounding board to understand if you're making right decisions. So it would be try to reach out to professionals. But if you can't do that, then I would say try and reconcile your accounts, get onto an accountancy package if you can. Start actually reviewing what's happening in your business, because that can be the real foundation to then moving on and understanding, oh, okay, this is why I'm getting these pain points. This is why I'm suffering in silence and I don't understand what's happening. Because if you don't have that visibility, you're not going to be able to understand what's going on.
And if they're looking for a new finance function, or maybe somebody that does things a little bit differently, where can we find out more about Harry Lewington?
Yeah, so on my website, lewingtonsltd.com. So I'll be on there. You can find all you need on there, all the different packages that we're after. Also on LinkedIn, so Harry Lewington as well. So you can find all the information and really just a bespoke package that really suits around you and your needs, so you can just crack on with the stuff that you really want to focus on, which 9 times out of 10 probably isn't finance.
Harry, you've been an absolute pleasure. I've really enjoyed interviewing you today. Have you got any final words that you'd like to say before we cut the podcast?
No, I think really excited to have been on here. So yeah, thanks so much, Chris, for that opportunity.